Hey drummers, it's Rob Litton here from drumstheword.com. Welcome to this free mini song lesson. This song was suggested over on my Facebook page and got a lot of upvotes from other followers, so I'm very happy to be able to give you this song today. All Too Well by Taylor Swift. And I couldn't find the name of the drummer that performed on this on the recording, so forgive me about that. That wasn't available on Wikipedia where it usually is. And I've got the I've got two pages of transcription for you, taking you through all the best parts, all the most important parts of the song. So you can download both PDF pages from my website. You find a link beneath this video. So have this printed out in front of you as we go through this together. And this song really is for beginners, but there are a couple of bits in it that take it to the more intermediate stage. And so as we get to those parts, I'll talk about how you can simplify them or simply ignore them completely, because I think this song is really for beginners, and it'd be a shame if a new drummer is put off playing along to this song because just of a couple of parts that make it a little bit more difficult. So we'll talk about that as we get to it. The first part occurs where the drums come in at 41 seconds, and this is our basic drum beat through most of the song, apart from when the drummer moves to either the ride cymbal or the crash cymbal. We're playing eighth notes on the floor tom, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and bass drum on 1 and 3, snare drum on 2 and 4. So a basic rock beat, basic drum beat, but your right hand is on the floor tom and not the hi-hat or the cymbal like you usually would. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's about the tempo, I think. So just that one drum beat will get you through 95% of the song, really. Even when they move to the ride cymbal, you could just be playing that basic drum beat. But before we go on to the next section, let me just play that up to speed for you a couple of times without the microphone on so you can hear just the drums. So at 2 minutes 22, after a lot of that drum beat being played, we get to our first sort of new section. The drummer's playing this, 1 and 2 and 3. So the basic drum beat we just showed you, up to beat 3 though, where he stops, I'm presuming it's a he, where he stops and then he plays another snare drum and floor tom on beat 4, together like that. So we get this little break between beat 3 and beat 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Gives it a little bit more power, a little bit more emphasis by leaving that gap. Underneath the notation, you can see I've written a crescendo. That's that hairpin notation there, indicating that it's getting louder. So just over one bar, you're sort of building up in volume. It's a bit hard to show you out of context with the song. Don't go too hard, too loud at the ends, but just realise that for the previous part, he's kind of playing quite quietly. So when you get to that bit, you kind of get that effect where it sort of builds up in volume. So just for complete sake, let's hear that a couple of times as well. So right after that previous section, at 2 minutes 24, we go into this new section, and I found it very hard to hear exactly what the bass drum is doing throughout this song. Occasionally I heard very definitive bass drum notes popping out, but then other times I was like, was there a bass drum there or not? So I think the drummer's improvising a little bit with the bass drum, but this 2-bar example I definitely heard being played a few times here at this timestamp. So the first bar is just our basic drum beat, but starting with the crash cymbal. So you just move to a crash, then back to the floor tom for the and of beat 1. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Simple as that. But then the second bar has these extra bass drum notes on the and of 3 and the and of 4. So we get 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, boom boom bap boom boom bap boom boom bap boom 1. So the 2 bars together we get this, and it is a 2-bar loop that he plays. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and he then plays, forgive me by the way if I keep saying he, it's just easier than saying the drummer. I think he then moves, well he does, he plays a crash cymbal every 4 bars. So you get that bar being played, those 2 bars being played once, then again we're at the crash cymbal, and then the third time you play those 2 bars you do get a crash cymbal for this section. Okay, let's hear that played around a couple of times. So then at 2:43 we get a really cool drum fill, and this might push up the level of difficulty a little bit. We're playing the drum beat up to beat 3 normally, but it's building up in volume again as we talked about previously, hence the crescendo notation beneath it. 1 and 2 and 3. Then he moves to the snare drum to play a flam on the and of beat 3. Now a flam is simply where you play both hands together but slightly separated. It's not, and it's not where they're both at the same time, it's slightly separated. If you're finding playing flams difficult, then just remove the flam and play to a single snare drum note. The really cool bit next though is we get a line of 16th notes, 4 E-ander. So we get these 4 notes fitting into the space of 1 beat at the end of the bar. And the sticking, right, left, snare drum, a tom up in front of you, and then down to the floor tom for right, left. 4 E-ander 1, and it goes into a crash cymbal afterwards because it's a drum fill. So we get the whole bar together, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E-ander 1. Even slower, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E-ander 1. So you could play instead 1, 2, 3 and just don't play the flam if you wanted to. That'll work just as well, so don't feel you have to play that flam if you find that too difficult or it sounds wrong. So let's hear that a couple of times without the microphone on. So I believe, well yes, this next section occurs at 2:45 and it's the drum beat the drummer moves into after playing that previous drum fill. We're up on the, I've written it as the ride cymbal, but it sounds a little bit more crashy than that, a little bit more washy, so it's probably the crash cymbal, but it doesn't matter what you use. If you want to ride on the crash cymbal or ride on the ride cymbal, absolutely fine. You choose yourself depending on the volume and what you have available in your kits, but I'll put it on the ride cymbal just for now because it's a bit quieter than the crash. Basically what we got is this new drum beat where he is playing 3 and on the bass drum each time. 1, 2, 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. So it's like the second drum beat you probably ever learned. It's 1, 2, 3 and 4. 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 So it might be fun just to put the previous drum fill and that new section together in context. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. So now let's hear just that one bar, that new drum beat at 2:45, up to speed a couple of times without the old mic. Here we go. So then at 2:58 on page 2 of the notation, we're still up on the ride or crash depending on what you chose to play. And again, I just want to say that it is very hard to hear exactly what the bass drum's doing, but I believe the drummer then plays the bass drums filling in the gaps 1 and 2 and 3. And then we get the same drum fill idea we had previously. Instead of playing a flam, he just plays and. Then up to the high tom, 4 E-ander. So instead of before we had, it's exactly the same sticking, exactly the same rhythm. It's just right, left instead of right, left. That's the only difference. You could play That version, again, if you wanted to, just for fun, that would sound just as good. But you don't really hear the snare drum, or you don't hear the snare drum on beat 4, so I believe the drummer's just playing it up here on the tom. So that drum beat slowly. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and a 1. And let's hear that a couple of times up to speed. So this is probably the hardest part of the song because of what the bass drum's going to do. So what I've got here, and I've written here, occurs at 3:18, 4:44 and 4:54. It's the same drum fill, that the drummer plays every single time in those 3 spots. The first part of the bar is just really the drum beat he's playing before the drum fill, and the bass drum part might change a little bit, but from beat 3, this drum fill part is exactly the same every time. So the first time it occurs at 3:18, he's on the floor tom. Again, he's filling in the bass drums with between the snare drums, 1 and 2 and 3. And then we get this bit. I'll play what he's actually playing, and then I'll talk about simplifying it. 3 E and So we got bass drum on 3 and and that's going to be the tricky bit, putting those 2 bass drum notes together up to speed. 3 E and It's kind of cool, that snare drum pops out on the E of beat 3 in between the right hands. 3 E and but we're still playing just 3 and on the floor tom. It's just the bass drum's filling in that gap on the of beat 3, and that snare drum fills in the gap on the E of beat 3. 3 E and then play snare drum floor tom on beat 4 like you're just continuing the drum beats. And then another tricky bit is playing the bass drum on the E of beat 4, 4 E, and then flowing into the last 2 notes and on the floor tom, 4 E and So we get this line of notes that fill in all the gaps in a cool, clever way. So slowly from beat 3, 3 E and 4 E and 3 E and 4 E and So let's play the drum beat a few times. 1 and 2 and 3 E and 4 E and 1. 1 and 2 and 3 E and 4 E and 1. 1 and 2 and 3 E and 4 E and 1. So that requires a little bit of skill to be able to make the bass drum fit in the spaces and make the notes flow evenly. So talking about how we can simplify it. So you could just play from beat 3, 3 E and don't worry about playing the bass drum on the of beat 3. 3 E and, then just play 4 and leave out the bass drum on the E of 4 and just play the ander at the end. 4 and 1. So we're leaving a little gap there. 4 E, we're leaving out the bass drum on E. 4 E and 1. So you could play it 3 E and 4 and 1. And believe me, that'll work just as well for the song. So don't feel guilty if you can't play exactly what the drummer's doing. That'll work just as well. So you could play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. You've still got that snare drum popping out on the E of 3, and you're still ending the drum fill with those 2 floor tom notes. So there's a simplified version for you that'll work just as well. But now let's play the actual drum beats up to speed. But before I do, I just noticed I've written here underneath, note cymbal wash was added over the top. So I get an impression, and you'll see in this next part coming up after this, that there are some overdub sections occurring where extra toms were added, definitely extra crash cymbals were added, because during that drum fill, you're hearing a crash cymbal wash being played over the top, and there's no way the drummer could play the crash cymbal and the drum fill at the same time. So that must have been overdubbed, and I'm sure that occurs elsewhere in the song as well. So you might hear some things going on in the background, we're going, oh, I can't play all those things at the same time. That's because they were overdubbed, they were added later. And so the cymbal wash was added over the top during this drum fill to make it more dramatic. Anyway, let's hear that drum fill played a few times. So this last section occurs at 4:20, coming close to the end of the song. And this is definitely a part that I think was overdubbed, because I think we're hearing a snare drum being maintained, being played in each bar on beats 2 and 4, but the tom part, this tom part was added over the top. So what I've got for you here is, I think, the most important part, and that's replicating the tom part, the tom rhythm you're hearing over the top. If you find this really difficult, and a new drummer would find it difficult to read off the page, if you can't memorise it from listening to the song, then feel free to throw in anything you like over the top yourself. Make up your own rhythms. I think the most important thing, though, is to maintain the bass drum on all 4 beats. 1, 2, because that's what the drummer's doing, playing 4 bass drum notes per bar, and over the top, stuff like that. But make sure that doesn't throw you off what the bass drum is doing. If you play your own thing, if the bass drum thing is being maintained, then you've still got a solid beat going. If you start to have that break up on the bass drum, then it's going to sound a little bit sloppy. So if you're going to add your own rhythms in, make sure you feel comfortable playing the bass drum on all 4 beats. Or you could just play, or how about you're playing all the bass drum notes, for example. So you could play around with that, but let's take a look at what I'm hearing on the recording. And again, just the first time I mentioned it, this is what I'm hearing the toms playing, and they could have been overdubbed. I think they were. So the first bar, we're playing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 ands, but then the left hand's going to come up to the 1 tom. I believe he just uses 1 tom for this extra rhythm stuff, and he plays 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 ands. So just and 2 and 3 and 4 and with the floor tom. The next bar starts with 1 and 2, and then we come up to that high tom. It could be the medium tom, it doesn't matter what tom you use. And we're going to play our first tricky little rhythm where the drummer plays and 4 E and. Those notes are all linked together, the bass drum falls in between. And 4 E and. That's kind of tricky if you've never played 16th notes. And 4 E and. So it's important you get that flow. If you can't leave that gap, just play and 4 E and. But on the recording, he's playing. It's a little bit tricky there. Then on to beat 4, we just play 4 E and. Do that again. 4 E and, and it goes into beat 1 on the next bar. 4 E and 1. So those first 2 bars, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 E and 4 E and 1. Next line, bar 1, 1 and 2 and. I believe the tom is being played again on the and of 2. It could be the floor tom. You could play 1 and 2 and, but I think he's playing 1 and 2 and. Then again, I can't be 100% sure. I think the bass drum is just being played on its own on beat 3. 3 and 4 and, again that bass drum's just being maintained. 3 and 4 and. So we get 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The next bar starts to say, well, starts the same as the bar above it. 1 and 2. Then we get the and 3, but we don't get the E and afterwards. And 3 and 4 and 3 and 4 and. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You could play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. I'm just playing the tom with the bass drum on beat 3 and on beat 1 of the next line, if that feels more comfortable for you. So that line, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Then we get out of it kind of nicely at the end where we play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So exactly the same as the first bar, except I don't think there's a floor tom being played on beat 1. Please feel free to play a floor tom if that's more comfortable for you. It won't matter, but I don't think he's playing that. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then the last bar is just to build up on the snare drum, getting louder. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And it's, again, quite hard to hear on the recording, but I think he stops on beat 4, giving the last beat just that break before going into the last section. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Don't get too loud, but you are building up a little bit in volume. So before I play up to speed, let's play those 6 bars slowly. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4 and a 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and a 3 and 4 and a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, let's hear those 6 bars played up to speed. So I hope you had fun with that, hope you found that useful. Don't forget to download both pages of the PDF for free. Again, you'll find the link for that beneath this video. And you might want to consider signing up to become an online member at my website, drumstheword.com. And what I currently offer for $97 is a full year's online access to every single full video song lesson I've ever recorded and transcribed. Unlike this lesson where I just taught you the main parts, in my full song lessons I teach you every single bar from start to finish. You get the fully transcribed PDF drum chart to go with each lesson, and I've got almost 450 famous and popular songs up on the website already. As a thank you for signing up, I give you access to hundreds more videos teaching you many famous drum beats, fills and even drum solos. I give you 3 ebooks written over the years containing hundreds more famous drum beats, fills and solos. And then over the year of your subscription, you also gain instant online access to all the new material that I upload for my members. And I record new lessons every week unless I'm ill or on holiday. So you've got lots of cool stuff to look forward to over the year of your subscription. And if you want to help influence what songs get chosen in the future, then go over to my Facebook page. That's the best place to do it. Just type Drums the Word into Facebook, or you'll find a link somewhere around the website. Got any questions though, feel free to email me at rob@drumstheword.com. And until our next drum lesson together, toodle pip and happy drumming to you.